Welcome back to Emma's Pearls. Today we are going to be doing some baking, some recipes that Emma had given to her children and grandchildren, and they have passed down to us. And so I also wanted to share some stories that my great-great-grandmother, Emma Bell Kennedy, wrote in her journal. And so some of it we couldn't really read. The writing was a little bit smudged, so this is the best we could pull from it. So it might sound a little off. But she said, the part of the mansion that now stands and Grandmother Bideman lived in Uncle David's part. From our part to Grandma's part there was what they called the well room. Here in the cool depths of the old well they kept their butter and other eats that needs to be kept cool. As a very little fellow, Mother sent Fred A. on errands because he was to be depended upon. If he was told to come right back, no inducement anyone put on held him. He had, at that age, that complete ability to handle his own boat. One day Mother sent him to get the butter. He went and brought back the pound of pat, homemade butter, handing to Mother, as calm as you please, Mother removing the cloth that lay over it. She saw right in the top the mark of someone's teeth, as they had taken a bite. She looked at her young son and said, Freddie, who took that bite out of my butter? And his reply came at once, I did. And she said he never told me a lie. It was a big temptation for one that loved butter as he did. This came as a little fellow, yet all through his boyhood and manhood, we knew Fred could be trusted to the utmost. Another thing I remember well, Fred loved cake raw, and he'd say, Mother, give me my share before it's cooked. And as I grew, I noticed Fred had as good a share of cake when it was baked as though he had not asked for it raw. Cake never got very stale around our house if Fred was home. Frank's was his long suit. One day while plowing, he plowed up a nest of snake eggs. Knowing they were the harmless garter snake, he took them in the house and concealed them on the kitchen shelf. In due time, he got his reward. One morning, while Mother was getting breakfast, she saw a snake crawl out of the cans and pack that stood on the shelf. Mother could let loose with a good cry. When something frightened, and one thing that brought, "Oh, Alex, come quick," was a snake. She left the breakfast, the kitchen, and found Father and Fred where they were doing the chores. Oh, come, there's snakes in the kitchen. Come quick, at once. Fred remembered. He laughed and gathered the babies up, but Mother could not be coaxed to finish the breakfast. So the joke was on him, for I suppose his help was called to put the meal on. As I remembered, it seemed to me his great delight was just springing a surprise on us girls, but it was all done in the spirit of fun.
So this was all in the Nauvoo house that everybody's living in at that time.
Yep. Our first recipe we're going to make is Grandma Emma's raisin cookies. And so first what we're going to do is add shortening and sugar together.
And this recipe, you're going to have it on the website, right, so that people can have it?
Sure. I will figure that out.
Everybody would love to have Emma's raisin cookie recipe.
So we're going to mix this all together as she did. Otherwise, I would have put it in my KitchenAid and just mixed it. But we're trying to be authentic here. So mix the shortening. So it's a half cup shortening and 2 cups brown sugar. Right. We're also going to add the butter. I like to keep my, well, not keep my butter, but as I'm making things, I make sure that my butter is at room temperature, along with the eggs and my milk.
Which I don't think was a problem for Emma.
Nope. Definitely easier in a KitchenAid.
I bet you anything that Emma had her hands in. And so that she would have been taking her hands, kind of like you. You've never made a pie dough, have you? Where you have to take the shortening and put it with flour and do it between your fingers till it becomes crumbly.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you that's how she did it.
Probably.
It's faster. It's looking good.
There. It's just butter, shortening, and eggs. So again, 1/2 cup shortening, 3/4 cup butter, and 2 cups of brown sugar.
This is a book that Angeline and I put together, when was that,
8? 2008?
It was a long time ago, 2008. But it has Emma's cookies in it. It's called The Emma Smith We Know. And it has all these fun recipes. It's about the family and what they remember about Emma. And it has her recipes in and out of it.
So that's pretty well mixed. So now we're going to add our eggs.
So there's 4 eggs.
I usually do 2 at a time. So I became a chef and went to school, and I've just always been super interested in baking. Cooking on the side, sort of, but baking was what I loved the most.
So one of the things I enjoyed about when Angeline was becoming a chef is it just happened to be when she started, COVID hit. And so she had to be here at home making all of these meals. And she'd call and tell me, everything that she was doing. And I said, what are you doing with all the food? Because, she was having to make so much for this class. There's no way her family could eat it.
It was an online class at Park City, or through Park City Culinary Institute. And so
she had all this food. And I asked her, what are you going to do with it all? So she was feeding the neighborhood, taking food. Imagine they loved her taking this class.
They've missed it.
When it was over with, they're saying, where's the food?
They still miss it. Yeah. I still make a lot of goodies, and then when I try new recipes, I will still hand them out to the neighbors because it's just too much or it's a lot of sugar.
So one of the things when she was 15 years old, in our church we fast every first Sunday, and the money that we would have spent on the food goes to helping those in need. And Angeline would come home, everybody's fasting, she'd come home from church and start baking and cooking, no-bake cookies and cakes and all kinds of stuff. And everybody's fasting, smelling all of this coming forth. But it was always on Fast Sunday when she started cooking.
Because I couldn't eat it, I liked to bake it. And I loved to try new recipes, and I did enjoy antagonizing my brothers. They could not handle the smell and not be able to eat it. And I thought that was fun. So then you're going to add your milk. It's a 1/2 cup of milk. And of course with these recipes I use whole milk because back in the day it would have been whole milk. Would have been raw. But
lots of fat in it. It would have had everything. So Angeline and her husband Nathan, they have students come in from other countries. And, every year she has someone come and stay with her. Last year she
foreign exchange students.
Last year she had, 2 years ago, she had one, Xenia, from Germany. And I was talking to Xenia the other night, and
she came back, and she and my other student from Germany came and visited this summer.
And so I was talking to her, she was talking about how she lost weight when she came here. And the whole reason she lost weight is because Mom cooked good food, really good food, healthy food.
Yep.
So Angeline is a great chef. So at some point, I'm hoping Angeline on here will be able to show you the cakes that she has made, then decorated. They're absolutely stunningly beautiful. One of them was my favorite. She's going to try to find, and that is where she plays basketball, and her basketball group wanted her to make a basketball for them to celebrate. And when I came and saw this, it looked literally like a basketball. The coloring, the everything was so perfect. So she would make cakes for the kids, and the kids would tell her, this is what I want. And she would go out and find the pictures of the cake that she wanted to do. She'd find pictures to make this cake just look just like it.
Alright, flour. And then 2 cups of flour. And when I gather up the flour, I fluff the flour in the bin so that it's not compacted.
So if Emma sifted it, what you've got is already sifted, is what you're saying?
No.
No?
No, it's not sifted. It's just, you don't want
Just-
compacted, so you're not going to get the proper measurement. And so you fluff it in the bin and then measure it out.
Very good to know.
So 2 cups of flour.
Now, the other thing that Angeline did, I don't know what year that was, it was around 2008, that she started making chocolates. And these were gorgeous chocolates, the kind that you buy in a box with all these different flavors. And then she started making truffles, trying to make, because her favorite thing was getting truffles wherever she traveled to try out a truffle and see. And so she
With
started
real
trying-
chocolate, not the fake stuff.
Not the wax stuff.
Yeah. So we have the flour and then the spices. So it is, let's see, 2 teaspoons baking soda, half a teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 teaspoon nutmeg. So those are all the spices in here. Got the spices.
Making the raisin cookies, I'm going to read a little bit out of our book about Emma. When Emma's children had friends over to play, they would be afraid to go home dirty. So Emma gave...
It's your by the microphone.
Start over. So I'm going to read a little bit about Emma and her raisin cookies. When Emma's children had friends over to play, they would be afraid to go home dirty. So Emma gave them some of her own children's clothes to wear. She would then clean up their clothes and give them cookies that she always had on hand. Tradition says the children managed to become dirty more often. They loved the cookies, so let's get dirty so Emma will give us her cookies.
Now we're going to add the oats. And it was 4 cups of oats and then 2 cups of raisins. Of course, you don't have to do as much raisins. My daughter said she would not eat these because there's raisins in them. So,
But your dad absolutely adores raisin cookies, so
yeah.
no matter where we go, if they have cookies, he's hunting for the raisin cookies.
Yeah. I prefer chocolate.
So this recipe comes from Gracia, and it was handed down to her by her grandmother. One of the words that Gracia said after she gave us the recipe, she said, "Warning, this cookie is not low calorie, but it is delicious. Some like to cook them so they remain softer. My son likes his burnt. I usually do some each way." I'm afraid that's the way I do cookies. Oh yeah, I forgot they're in the oven.
Mix it in.
Oh, that looks so yummy. You see all those raisins? Definitely taking home a bunch to your dad. Yep. That is beautiful.
And then the recipe does call for you to put it in the fridge for a few hours or overnight. Kind of figured we'd let it sit while we make our next recipe. So,
That's beautiful.
let me get over there. And there is our raisin oat. All right.
I'm afraid I'd be like Frederick. I want a spoonful of it raw.
Yeah, I can't do that. I just don't like raw stuff. I love raw cookie dough, chocolate chip cookie dough. That is it.
All right, so I'll get these all out of your way.
Okay, so this recipe is her fritter candidate recipe. So, do you want to explain her candidate?
Okay, well, you start out. I'm going to...
So first we're going to add flour, salt, baking powder, sugar together. We're going to sift those together.
Okay, so the Fritters candidates recipe.
Actually, it's switched, so you're by the microphone.
All right, so the candidates fritters recipe. Emma's grandson, Frederick Alexander Smith, said the candidates were served with honey or syrup. During big political campaigns, several candidates came to the Mansion House Hotel for dinner, and grandmother made fritters. At the meals served with honey or syrup. Delighted politicians asked, "What do you call these things?" She said, "It all depends. A year like this, we call them candidates, all puffed up and air in them." And now another one says, once in the prophet Joseph's time, When a number of candidates and politicians came to her house for dinner, and not having been notified of their coming, Emma made a hasty dessert of a sort of fritter fried in fat. They were a hollow ball of pastry served with sauce or cream and sugar. One of the guests complimented her and asked what she called them. She smiled and answered soberly that they were called candidates.
Good as you cook. Most men are not ready for that.
Well, sir, most men don't know what they're missing.
I'll just have another.
Candidates.
Such an arrogant man.
I suppose it does take a certain kind of confidence to run for public office.
You realize he only wants to use your influence.
I think we need all the friends we can find.
Real friends, Joseph. Be careful. Don't let yourself trust a man like that.
Don't worry, I won't. He did like your fritters, though.
You couldn't even remember their name. Perhaps I should call them something else. In honor of the election. Candidates.
Candidates.
All puffed up and full of hot air.
Now we're going to lightly beaten these eggs. So separating the egg yolks and the egg whites, we're gonna just kind of beat the eggs.
So you're
Yolks.
beating just the yolks, yep. Are these from your chickens?
No, these ones are store-bought.
Okay. I was going to say, we're really authentic if they're from your chickens.
Nope. We ate those ones already.
So what Angeline is looking up at is the more modern way of cooking. She has this wonderful large screen that has the recipes on it. She'll throw a picture up
I
here.
cannot remember a recipe worth anything. I can make them over and over and over again, but I cannot memorize it.
So she will show you a picture of what she has up on the wall so she can see her recipes.
So you're going to create a small well in your flour.
You see that?
Can't see it very well, but just put a little well in there. That's where we're going to add our milk and our egg yolks. And we do need to beat the egg whites. So
And she
I
would have
love my
had.
modern conveniences.
So how would she have beaten those? She would have. I remember, my your great grandmother. That. So your grandma told me about remembering her grandmother standing in the doorway, leaning up against the wall, and she had a bowl in her hand, and she was taking a wood spoon, and she was just a beating like this to get it fluffy. So yeah, they did do it back then.
Yep. I'm gonna get it.
Well, it's getting a little more fluffy. Show the camera that it's actually getting more fluffy
Oh, I
there.
can't see that very well. But yes, it's a
It's
little
getting fluffy.
More airy. I'm gonna cheat.
So Angeline is cheating here. As she's cheating, I remember as a kid we were trying to get some whipped cream to whip, and we were beating it, and then we pass it to the next kid and they'd beat, and then pass it to the next kid and they'd beat. I'm wondering how much help Emma had in the kitchen to do this stuff. Going to really truly do that.
All right, stiff peaks. Kind of stiff there. Okay, one thing too about this recipe that was passed down is I think somebody forgot to pass down a fat content, because when I made this the first time, it definitely had an element missing. So
Was it tough?
yes, and then I added a little bit of shortening, and so I'm gonna guess about a tablespoon, but I want to kind of look at it to see.
And you're going to continue to cheat?
Yep. Yeah, definitely needs some fat in there. So
So what she's looking at, you see it's real crumbly.
I'm gonna start with a tablespoon.
So one
So
of
I
the
think it needs another tablespoon of
of
fat.
fat. So one of the things we were talking about is there was someone, we were talking with Gracia this morning, and she was talking about that there was one time that she made her cornbread, and it was so hard. This one of the guests that had it said that you could chew up a sweat trying to eat it because it was so tough. And we were talking about what kind of access did she have? And so Angeline looked it up. Baking soda came about in 1791, so she would have had that. And buttermilk, she would have had access to that, so that would come together and make things light and fluffy. Baking powder didn't come around until 1843, but they did use something that was called pearl ash, and pearl ash comes from also the pot ash, and so the chemicals with that, with the buttermilk, and the vinegar type flavors would give a reaction that would lighten it. So if she had something that just did not seem light and fluffy, it was probably because she didn't have access.
But I have made her cornbread, and it is pretty good. So
As long as she had the
that one comment could have been a moment she didn't have the proper ingredients, and so, but the recipe passed down is pretty good.
And like they said, Frederick says people would come in and they would be there all of a sudden. They were not prepared, so she'd have to make things all of a sudden.
So it's a little bit less crumbly, but still, I think it needs a little bit more. So I think I'm
So you
gonna
can
do
see it.
one more
You can
tablespoon.
see a little bit there. So they would have had natural yeast, which she would have made her bread with. But if you're surprised by somebody coming all of a sudden, you don't have time for it to raise and make a light bread or anything.
I don't know. I make my natural yeast on a whim. I mean, if I use it a lot, it's easy to just throw together something.
But it needs time to rise, doesn't it? For pancakes, it doesn't.
Well,
but
as
for-
often as I use it, I can just start using it. Like, unless I had just used it. So it could have been like she just used it and needed to let it grow.
Rebuild.
Yeah, to rebuild.
Okay.
So,
Our cousin Donna Smith Naglin, she said, talking about the cornbread recipe, Emma served many people and was always polite. When there was company and they didn't have anything to serve, she would make cornbread and serve it with sorghum syrup.
and sorghum syrup is just kind of like a maple syrup. We didn't like it that way, no. So, okay, now you're just gonna put your stiff whipped egg whites and fold it in.
Our cousin Nancy Sue Smith said, my mother, Mary Lorena Smith, said that when Emma ran the mansion house, these are the biscuits she made. This recipe came from Mary Lorena Smith's recipe box. So that's Emma's
Those are her
biscuit recipe.
Yeah, we'll have to make that another time.
Yeah. Now, we talked about our cousin, Omaha Bob, we call him because he was from Omaha. Omaha Bob Smith, because we have a Bob Smith that has always also been on here that is from BYU, used to work there. So that because we had so many Bob Smiths, we had to differentiate who they were. But anyway, Bob Smith, Robert Wendell Smith, stayed with us for a couple of weeks. And he told us this story. And this was talking about Emma's peanut brittle. And he showed Angeline and I how to do the peanut brittle. And we were over the stove and he'd say, now watch. When it turns this color, this is what you do. Don't stir it at this time. He was very, very strong in how to do it. It was fun. When I was a kid growing up, my grandmother, Nettie Smith, made it every Christmas. She said it was always something they did as a family tradition, and it was Alexander Smith, Emma and Joseph's son, who had taught her how to make it, and he picked it up watching his mother, Emma, make it over an open fire. Grandma Nettie's husband, my grandfather, Don Alvin Smith, who is Alexander's son, died when he was only 33, leaving 6 little children under the age of 10. Alexander moved her and the children in next door and oversaw the raising of those children. That's what made it like we are a generation closer to Emma. So these things being passed down was closer because they were raised by those that were just great-grandchildren of Joseph and Emma.
So the recipe wants you to let it sit and chill for 30 minutes. So I put it in the fridge. So now we're gonna go back to our cookies. Okay, so I'm cheating again. Oven, cookie sheet, slip mat. So I'll show the spoon, but then I'm gonna cheat again and use my scooper. So about teaspoon to tablespoon size drop on the cookie sheet. But we're gonna cheat. Probably fast forward through this too.
I love watching how you wipe it off onto the spatula. That,
So don't get too much.
yeah, I never would have thought of that. That's nice.
Okay, now we're gonna let it bake for about 10 minutes. Should I move my spoon? Apparently makes a lot of cookies.
Well, she had a lot of kids that come
Yeah.
over to play with her kids. One of the things is Angeline's done so much to work upon her talents and her gifts. I was thinking about how many people in our family that I have met that have so many talents. Australia, I was talking to Joan, and she told us of all the things that she was doing there and how that she was a good cook. So there's a lot of very great talents in this family. So if you'd like to share with us, let us know. Angeline's brother, he is one that does deep diving, and he does that with holding his breath, going down, and goes spearfishing. And he's been in the competitions with the world competitors, and so there's a lot of other talents we'd like to hear about, huh?
Yeah, a lot of people good at aim. I was talking to Lily. She's in California, and I don't remember.
Duck.
Duck.
Lillian Duck.
Yes, but she's through Alexander.
Mm-hmm.
But she said that her son was in the military, but he took her out shooting, and she, first time ever, and she was shooting and she shot really well. He was like, oh my gosh, Mom. But I started out with bow and arrow. I loved bow and arrow, and I wanted to get my hunter's license, but they required me to shoot a shotgun, and I'd never shot a shotgun. And so my first shot was a bullseye. And so,
Yeah, and then your dad, he would go out and do the competitions to win a frozen turkey at Thanksgiving time, and they would put him, I can't remember how many 100 yards away, with an aspirin, and he had to be able to shoot it. And he did. And he was able to do that. And then I was talking to Gracia. She's a crack shot. Her mother was a crack shot. It just seems to run in the family. Your cousin that's in the military, he found out, no, David, he's an amazing shot, but also Kyle, that he just was in basic training, and he was hitting the bullseyes every time.
he's my nephew.
And so this is amazing, what is happening here, that, we want to know your talents. Kim Smith, that has been on with Angeline, her daughter had designed, what are they, dinosaurs? Or, no, it was dragons. And she would draw them, gorgeous. Even as a little girl, she was able to draw and create things beautifully, and that turned into making toys. So there's a lot of talents out there. We'd like to hear from you.
Okay, so we paused and let everything sit in the fridge for a bit, and now we're going to continue. We're going to start with our candidates, our fritter candidates, which also you can create different types of fritters by putting like vegetables in it, or apples, like apple fritters, just whatever you want to throw in there.
used to put corn in them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I like to just spoon them on, and then throw them in the deep fryer. I fry it in grapeseed oil or avocado oil, and then just let it fry up.
So when these guys were young, her brothers and her sisters and sister, and I had gone to a good dear friend, and her name was Jerry Bangeter, and I went to her house, and she was one that would teach you how to make donuts. Every time they had Halloween, you'd go there, and they were rolling out this large, great big thing of donuts, and it was so fun learning from her how to make these donuts. They used to have a spud nut shop, And so I came home with her recipe and everything. Sometime later, I decided I was going to make these donuts. And I started, it was probably about 8 o'clock at night. And I started making these donuts. And I started rolling them out and fluffing them and rolling them out. And I started making all these donuts. I made round ones and I made square ones. I made everything you can imagine. And your dad walked in and he says, he's looking, I had donuts on the table. I had donuts on every counter. He says, what are you going to do with all these? I was having so much fun making donuts. I wasn't even thinking about who's going to eat all these. So I told all you kids, call your friends, tell them bring a plate, and we just load up. Neighbors. I was frosting them with all kinds of fun things, but I was having a lot of fun.
So watch those turn brown. And then flip it. They are looking done. A little bit too done, but that's okay. Okay, so this is my daughter Rory, and she's going to try one of our fritter candidates. So, break it open. You want to show them the inside? And then,
I don't know if you can see it.
And then pour some syrup on it, or just eat it plain. So, we generally just eat it plain.
But with Emma, they poured syrup on it, or they did honey. This is real syrup, so it'd be kind of like, so the Smith family, they would tap the trees and make maple syrup, maple candy, all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
What you think? Good. She did that for people, so when people would surprise them and come to see the prophet, every once in a while they would come as such a surprise. She didn't have much time to plan, and so this is what she would make for everybody.
And it's perfect timing because it's a little political right now. A lot of voting and candidates running around, so
Puffed up.
we'll make some more. So this is my other daughter, Lucy, and she's gonna eat it with some honey.
Yep, because why not?
This is the way the Smiths ate it, was with honey. And Lucy is named after Lucy Mack Smith.
I am.
How do you
That
like
was
it?
really good.
Well, there's another good tester.
These are picky kids too.
Okay, so finished putting them in the oil, and here's our candidates. And so,
Now there's been 2 eaten, but all of this dough was only about the size of a softball inside the bowl. Made quite a bit.
some dark ones, you know, burnt enough that maybe Gracia's son would like it. And there we go. Emma's fritters. And now we are going to go back to our cookies and start baking those as well. Okay, so we also had our cookie dough in the fridge. And okay, so cookies are out, slightly brown, a little bit doughy on top, so we're going to keep it in just a little bit longer. One sec. All right. There they are.
They look beautiful.
Grandma Emma's cookies. And then we will come back and show you when they're all done. All right, so we finished our cookies. Here's our oatmeal raisin cookies, Emma Smith's recipe. And this is my son Chase, and he's gonna try one.
What do you think, Chase?
It's really good.
You like it? Is it?
It passes the test.
Is it better than the chocolate chip cookies that Rory makes?
No.
No. Well, it's called.
Raisin cookies, you have to have a taste.
Yes. Anything else we want to add, Mom?
Well, just get a hold of us if you have some talents you'd like to share. We'd like
From-
to hear them.
And thank you so much for watching. So like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.